All right, we've got people starting to roll in. So we're going to give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
Good to see these folks rolling in. I see some names
yeah.
I recognize. So this is good stuff. Keep coming.
Love to see this number jumping up. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Danielle, so I'll be moderating today. I've got Mark and Chris with me. We'll jump to introductions in just a second, but thank you so much for joining us today. We're about to get started. All right. So, all right. So as I said, I'm Danielle. I'll be kind of taking you through how Ambition uses Ambition today. I'm so excited to start talking to Chris and Mark and hear from them and all the expertise that they have for you today, talking about driving accountability, encouragement, and how to lead sales teams. So we've got I'm joined by Mark McWatters, who's our VP of Sales, and Chris O'Connor, who is our Director of Sales Development today, to talk about how they use Ambition to coach their teams. So Chris, you were actually a customer of Ambition before you started with us. So I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about that journey.
That's right. Yeah. Have the unique position of buying the tool and then now being on the selling side of it. So I've been in the same seat that many of you were at one point as well. So I manage the sales development function here at Ambition. I've been here for about a year and a half and have absolutely loved it. We'll talk today about some of the tools that I use on a day-to-day basis, especially this year as we have scaled the sales development function here. We started the year with 3. And now have 12. So really excited to kind of share some of the things that I've been using with the tool to make that a little bit easier for me.
Awesome. And then Mark, you're one of the OGs.
Yeah, I've been around here for about 4.5 years. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark McWatters. I lead the sales team. I oversee our mid-market enterprise SMB AEs, as well as the sales development crew. Chris will be most of the star of the show today, but I will definitely share how we are using Ambition to manage that AE use case as well. I think what I'm really excited about with this is our hope is that whether you're a customer or a potential future customer, that you're getting a very behind the scenes look at how we use our own platform to make our lives as sales managers easier and in a way that is very practical, and you're seeing how the sausage is made essentially. And so how can we do that in a way that's valuable to you? We will do our best. We have some examples framed up for you, but we also hope that you chime in and ask how to do things. Again, nothing is too in the weeds. If you're a customer, ask us. We're happy to tell you how we do it. Or if you're considering Ambition and want to know more of the real story about how one piece might influence the business, we want to give you that clarity too. So I'm excited everybody's here and looking forward to sharing how Chris and I use Ambition.
Absolutely. So before we jump in, just to go over some housekeeping and kind of talk about how you can ask your questions. So we are recording. If you can't stay the entire time, or if you want to have this in your back pocket, or if you want to send it to a friend or colleague, you will get a follow up with this recording afterwards. So no worries there. And because we have so many people joining, you all are muted, but we all highly encourage you to use the chat. So I'll be monitoring the chat while Chris and Mark are speaking and presenting, so I can lift up your questions to them. We will have a live Q&A at the end of this. So highly encourage you to use that. So the 2 main questions that we're going to answer today, or that Chris and Mark are going to answer today, is how can I encourage and motivate my team, especially while we've been remote? This is a huge one for a lot of people since we are remote. How do I keep that energy alive? How do I keep the team motivated? And then secondly, how can I hold myself, my team, and each other accountable, especially while we are remote? So those are the two main questions that they're going to get to today. And then I did want to kind of start with some interesting statistics. So we have in a recent survey conducted by Accenture, they had 9,000 respondents, and of those 9,000, 46% of respondents actually said that they are pessimistic about work or have already decided to quit their jobs. And a big problem of that is that there's a lack of meaningful connection, especially in this new remote world. And so employees are 1.2 times as likely to feel as productive as when they feel connected and motivated. So that is what Mark and Chris are going to take us through today. So Chris, I'll actually stop sharing my screen and let you jump on.
All right, let's do it.
Let's Chris, let's frame this up a little bit for everybody first. Let's reiterate a little bit of your story. So for everybody, at the beginning of this year, Chris had 3 sales development reps on the team. And for someone like me, I'm looking at the sales development team and I'm saying, okay, what's the business case to keep growing this team? It's obvious we want more pipeline. Is the business case sound to keep growing the sales development function? So we had people a lot smarter than me to look into this and say, hey, the math is clear. We need to double down, triple down, actually quadruple and more down on what Chris is doing with the sales development group, because the way we're scaling pipeline, the business case is very obvious. So when that happened earlier this year, Chris and I are talking, it's like, we got to go grow this team. We need to onboard, like he shared earlier, now we're at 12, so it's quadrupled. We need to onboard sales development in a way that is really clean, is also very fun, because we're in this remote world where recognition and culture is really hard to come by. And we need a way for Chris to be able to lead 12 folks or 12 people on the team and not be pulling his hair out and work 100 hours a week, right? And so while I think he's pulled his hair out a few times and he's not quite working 100 hours a week, what we found is ambition became a very fundamental way of him doing that. And so the idea behind how ambition uses ambition really stems from us watching Chris and me as use cases of how he is using the platform to drive his team. So back to what I said earlier, like, this is Trey that you're looking at here is an actual SDR at Ambition. And so Chris is about to get into some behind the scenes stuff that hopefully frames up how we do this well at Ambition and how you might be able to do this well at your company.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks for teeing that up, Mark. And so basically, like he mentioned, Trey is a rep with us now. This is actually the beginning of his 3rd week. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how we use Ambition to help onboard new reps. So this is a perfect example of Trey, who's actively onboarding right now. So the first thing I'm going to talk through is how I use Ambition for onboarding. Then we're going to shift over to competitions, the thing that we're probably most known for, and we'll get into some specifics there. The third thing I'm going to talk through is how I coach using Ambition. So we'll take you into a live coaching one-on-one with one of my reps. And the fourth thing that we'll talk about is the fun aspects, the recognition, the motivation, pushing those alerts to Slack and Microsoft Teams, things like that. So those are the kind of the big things that we'll touch on. But as Mark mentioned, please post some questions. If you have anything that you're curious about and you want me to dig deeper, I'd love to do that. All right, so let's start with Trey. So Trey, like I mentioned, this is week 3 for him. And what we use is the scorecards a little bit differently. So we've got different roles set up in the system. So we've got normal SDRs, senior SDRs, and then for Trey, we've got a ramping SDR role. And so what you're looking at here is his daily activity score. So we're looking at 4 different metrics for him. And again, these metrics are going to be a little bit different than a veteran rep who's kind of running on all cylinders. And so we're looking at, how many calls is Trey making? How many connects is he getting? And then what are the talk time on those connects? And then the last metric is sequenced activities. So we use outreach, and that's going to be tracking his emails that he's sending through the platform, as well as LinkedIn touches. And so The benefit here is we want Trey to know very early on in his tenure as an SDR what good looks like on a day-to-day basis, right? So when he logs on in the morning, it needs to be very clear to him, especially because we're all remote now and I can't, stand beside Trey and say, hey, what are you doing today, right? And so we want to make it very clear to him what success looks like on a day-to-day basis with these metrics that will get him to the ultimate objectives that we want for him.
Chris, to add here for the audience, a little more color in that Trey has never been an SDR before. So the idea of painting a clear picture for him obviously is pretty critical. To give you the quick background on Trey, because he's got a really cool background, is he played college basketball up in Michigan, and he's holding that basketball in his photo because he's the 3-point record holder at, I think it's Kalamazoo. And so if you think about someone like Trey, he in basketball, like he's familiar with the process, the practice, like how many shots he needs to put up. That is ingrained in him. And so how do we take that same process, that same focus, and apply it to being an outbound SDR at Ambition? And so when we think about scaling or onboarding a sales development rep via scorecards, we're thinking, like Chris said, how do we point him in the right direction so at the end of the day, even if he didn't book a meeting that day, Trey knows I had a good day. And that's where this activity scorecard can be really valuable. And I imagine a lot of our customers using that in the same light. But for someone like Trey, obviously that gives him a lot of peace of mind that I'm new, I'm figuring this out, but I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing that will make me successful.
Yeah, so we focused here on activities, but we also will have, objective for him. So it's a different objective scorecard than a more veteran rep. And you can kind of see just based on the profile here, just some of the other tools I'm using on a day-to-day basis with Trey to make sure that he's onboarding appropriately. So I'll be setting, kind of the shorter term goals for him, certain learning objectives that I want him to have along the way, week 1, week 2, week 3. And then, we're kind of focusing on the accountability aspects here, but I think it's also important, the other side of the house is the encouragement, letting Trey know early on that like, hey, you're controlling what you can control. You're getting some small wins, even though you might not be setting meetings yet. So we also set like an accolade for him that is, after week 2, he gets an accolade if he finishes, some certain objectives that we have for him. So this is a quick glimpse as some of the things that we're using for onboarding for Trey. Again, just as a recap, editing those scorecards for making new roles for your onboarding reps. And then again, that also allows them to compete in competitions with your more veteran reps because you've got those different roles set up. Okay.
Hey Chris, a quick question came through while we're on this. And I saw Patrick's question on productivity tab. We'll get there in just a second. Noah asked about talk time. Is this average talk time or total that you're tracking? And then can you also share the maximum points reached and kind of why you use that?
I got the question about talk time. What was the last one, Mark?
Oh, so is it average or total? And then can you share the maximum points reached and why you set that in the scorecard?
Yep. Good questions. And so with the talk time, it's total. We also have another metric in the system that is average. So you can use that as well. But in this case, I'm using total talk time. And then as far as the points that you talk through, so, the scorecard here, the goal is to get us to, it's kind of a super score that gets you to 100. So they're gunning for 100 activity score on a day-to-day basis. And so you'll see as I dig a little bit deeper on these metrics, you can, once you select what metrics you want to put in the scorecard, you can weight them appropriately. And so the system will then score that on 100. So in my case, of the 4 metrics I'm looking at here, what I feel like is the most important and is weighted the most heavily is the call connects. And so, you know, you can't just reach the 100 activity score by making a bunch of calls. You have to hit these other performance expectations in order to get that actual 100 activity score. Good questions there. All right, so let's keep moving on. So we talked about onboarding, but now let's focus a little bit on competitions. So, obviously, again, that's something that Ambition's known for, and I can talk about some specific competitions that we've used here recently that have been really effective. But I'd love to go down the rabbit hole with anybody who's interested on different competition ideas. It's something that I love talking through. So we can do that. But what I'm pulling
Hey, Chris,
up
while
here,
you're pulling this up for the crowd, if you got any competitions that you're thinking about, throw them in chat. We can tell you if we've run them before. Obviously, Chris is going to share some that have worked, but we get this question all the time about competition. So if you've got them, make sure you hit the chat.
So again, we're opening it up and it's showing you everything that we do here internally. So these are some of the current and past competitions that we have going on. So the first thing that you're going to notice is call blitzes. So we have 2 call blitzes a week. So those are our most frequent competition. Mark and I always say best practices when it comes to competitions is to have some kind of short-term competition going on at all times, but then also maybe a longer term monthly or quarterly competition at going on at the same time. And so our call blitzes are the most exciting time of the week, and those are more of our shorter term competitions. And you can see the winners with each. And again, these are all competitions that our new reps can be competing in as well. One of the competitions that we just finished up was we're actually this week having all of our SDRs in town in Nashville together. And so prior to this meeting, we were like, hey, we're not going to be as productive as we normally are this week. So we want to make sure that we front load the month and do really well at the beginning of the month. So we built this pre-Nashville meeting set competition, and it was super effective. You can see team can't lose won by 1 point here. And so the benefit, and many of you who use the platform know this, the benefit of Ambition is the ability to spin up these competitions very quickly, have it manage all of those manual tasks that you might otherwise have to do. And the best example I can use is last month, the big competition we ran was an SDR Olympics competition. And within that competition, there were 20 smaller competitions that were going on. And it took me probably a total of 10 minutes to spin up all of those competitions. So you can imagine that's like competition overload. There's so many competitions going on, but very easy to spin up, very easy to score, and keep people alerted as to what's going on. And so that's an example of just how easy the tool is to use. And you can see once you drill into some of these competitions, it's going to do all the scoring and evaluation work there for you. One other notable competition that we always like to talk about, it's really one of the biggest hits here internally, but it's called our Street Pot. And so it kind of happened organically, but we noticed some of the SDRs who, would set maybe 2 meetings in a day in our Slack channel. Other people started chiming in saying, hey, I wonder if they could set 3. I wonder if they could set 4. And then some people kind of organically said, well, I'll Venmo you $20 if you're able to get that 4th. And so that was kind of the genesis of what we're calling the Street Pot. And so now if an SDR sets 4 meetings in a day, they win a pot of money that the company has set aside. And then anyone else in the company that wants to throw in a little extra can do that as well. But I think the importance there is prior to the Street Pot, it was very rare to have someone set 4 meetings in a day, right? But now that we submitted that as a competition and built a lot of hype around that, we have people hitting the 4 meetings a day, probably once a week now. It's very wild when you raise the bar and set the expectations a little bit higher, and people know that there's going to be some incentive at the end there. It's really driven performance up. So that's something that I always like to mention as well is the streak pot. So if anyone wants to talk more about that later, we can do that as well.
Chris, do you have a streak pot Slack teed up? I'm pulling one up so we can show how we recognize that.
I don't.
Okay, here. Let me share real quick, and I'm gonna expand upon this because I think our customers, if there's one thing you take from a competition idea, launch the streak pot. Chris deserves all the credit here. This was a killer idea, and it drove a ton of engagement with his team. Hold on, I am starting the streak pot story here now. We'll pick up at Miranda's second meeting. So Chris has a new hire. How long has Miranda been here? A month? 2 months?
2 months.
Okay. And so Miranda is seeing other folks hit the streak pot. And now I'm sharing Ambition Slack with you guys. Like, if this isn't a behind the scenes look at Ambition, I don't know what is. Okay. So here's Miranda at what time is this? 10:36, and she's on Pacific. I'm on Central. So this is 8:30 in the morning. Miranda sets her second meeting already of the day, sales enablement. Okay. So Miranda Morrison set 2 meetings today. Can we make it 3? This is Ambition automating the recognition. Miranda has, what's his name? Harry Styles drinking martinis to celebrate every time this happens. So Miranda sets that meeting. We got some more SDRs setting meetings. Holy smokes, Miranda's already made 75 dials in the day, and it is 9:05 Pacific time. She drank a lot of coffee. We got more meetings happening, but I'm telling the Miranda story. Hold on, where's her next one? She's made 150 calls. Chris has this automated trigger that goes off. Boom, she sets her third meeting. So Answer Financial, there you go. She sets her meeting. Harry's drinking martinis. When the third meeting happens, the whole company goes, surely you're going to go hit the streak pot, right? Like, you're already at 3. You got to go hit the 4th. And again, remember, she's in her first or second month here. So she hits her activity score, of course, because she's dialing $1 zillion an hour. She's got her third set. Can we make it 4? Here's Grace and AE chiming in saying, like, go Miranda. Here's Katie, our people ops leader. Here's me. Here's a head of CS. Everyone's paying attention. And by the way, there's not a ton of money on the line for the streak pot. The streak pot is more of a recognition. And then boom, she sets her 4th meeting of the day, fellow SDR, senior director of marketing, other SDRs. Everyone's chiming in. Here's Katie, our people ops director, with a gift counting to 4. But I want to show you guys this because the streak pot has been so powerful for us. It was Chris's idea. He built it in Ambition, and the trigger or the workflow that says they've set 2, can they set 3? 3, can they set 4? And the visibility, you steal this idea, y'all. It is super effective. I don't know what your streak pot number should be, but for us, 4 felt like a crazy number 6 months ago. And now, like Chris said, it's happening once a week. Sorry to take over there, Chris, but the streak pot is so money. I want to make sure people take that.
Yeah, and it's just great that it's involved so much people from the organization, and just makes the SDR feel, so excited and valued that everybody's chiming in like that. So, and meanwhile, Miranda's doing this. I'm onboarding 3 new reps, and they're seeing, hey, Miranda is only 60 days into this role and is already setting 4 meetings. Like, that's, I can do that as well. So very, very powerful. I did see one question that I'm happy to jump on real quick. Brian asked about creating competitions. So before we move on to coaching, so yes, primarily managers are creating those competitions. One of the features that we do have in the system also is called an ask. And so I've told my reps, hey, if at any moment you want to challenge another rep or, just drive a little bit more motivation, want to create your own competition, just create an ask. And that's something that I see immediately and can jump on and create that for them. We now are pretty distributed. We have 6 reps West Coast and 6 on the East Coast. And so there are times, especially at the end of the day here on the East Coast, where some of the West Coast reps are like, hey, we still have some dialing hours. Like, can we create our own competition for just West Coast reps? So we do that often.
I think there was another question. Nathan asking about workflow and teams. Yes, it'll work the same as you just saw that. So if you're a team shop, you get your streak pot ready. And I thought there was another. Oh, he asked a similar question, Chris, on or not a similar question, another question about accolades and prizes for your weekly call blitzes. How do you reward those?
So the weekly call blitzes are really just about pride. So there's nothing necessarily on the line there. The one thing that we do, since we have two competitions a week, if the same person wins the Tuesday and the Thursday blitz, we do have an accolade for that. So they'll win an accolade if they win both of those competitions. But otherwise, we just put some kind of spiff on the monthly competitions or the quarterly ones. Good question. All right, I'm sure there may be more questions on competitions, but let's roll into coaching here and talk a little bit more about that. So again, I'm going to take you live into one of my rep, Nolan's profile here, and we can look at the coaching check-in that I have with him this week. So again, this is live. I told him, there's a chance that I could be sharing this, so don't put anything that's he wouldn't want anyone seeing. But basically, I'll just roll through real quickly here the questions that I typically ask. So the first one I felt like is really important is, now that we're all remote and I have a little bit less of a pulse on how they're doing, it's just, tell me how you're doing. Let's dig into whether it's in work, out of work, like how are things going for you? And then we're going to focus on the week. So what are your goals this week? Making sure that they're writing that out. Again, this is rep led. So I really empower them to lead this conversation based on their feedback in the check-in. Then we're going to, we're focused on the week. Then we're going to look at the month. What's our path to quota this month? What do we need to be doing today in order to set us up for success this month? So Nolan's providing some feedback there. And then, the next one I always ask is, what do you need to win from me this week? Like, is there anything I can do to help you? Anything I can take off your calendar, any roadblocks that we can, help knock down for you? So that's the next question. And then the last two are some of my favorite, but these are the metric-based questions that Ambition allows you to put out here. And so they're dynamic based on where the rep is towards each of these metrics in the month. So Nolan, how do you feel about your 4 meetings held this month? So if it happened to be 6, it would have populated 6 there. And so has him talk through that. And then we also are asking specifically about call connects, huge indicator for success for us. So, how do you feel about your 11 call connects last week and what can we do to improve that? So that's an example of my check-in. The questions that I ask reps are going to be a little bit different with my onboarding reps, but Nolan is a fully ramped rep.
Yeah. So for some folks, I imagine that aren't customers that are watching this, to give you the quick, like how this actually works logistically, is that Chris has coaching programs. So for an onboarding rep, he has a questionnaire. For a tenured rep like Nolan, he has a questionnaire. Each week it sends to that rep without Chris doing anything additional. So Nolan gets an email, let's say Monday morning at 8:00, and it says, you have a check-in due. He logs in and he answers those questions that Chris outlined. Chris is notified that it's completed. And then when they sit down for the one-on-one, Nolan already knows what he wrote. Chris has already read what he wrote, and it gets them aligned very quickly. The other part you saw there is that ambition coaching is pulling in some metric attainment. So like the 4 meetings a month to date in that example he showed earlier. So as a sales manager, everyone's familiar with how busy you are and how you're pulling reporting from multiple systems to run one-on-ones. That's very time consuming, but important. Part of what we're solving for is pulling that data into one place, letting the rep actually be the one who's doing most of the work and filling it out, being rep led, which is how it should be anyways, on topics that you want, and then ultimately saving time. So Chris's prep for a one-on-one is a lot less than it would be without. So Chris, given you had life pre-ambition leading a similar team, how much time for someone out there who's considering ambition coaching, how much time is it saving you per one-on-one in prep?
I mean, I would say close to 30 minutes per one-on-one, because there's the pre-prep and then the post, and I think one of the challenges I always had was being able to track progress over time without a tool like Ambition. And, thinking to myself, hey, I know I talked to that rep about improving this, but I couldn't go back and figure out when it was I spoke with them about that. Have they made any progress towards that since we last spoke? So yeah, it's doing a lot to save me time around both the pre and the post.
Another use case that I'm sure our customers are doing that you're doing also in ambition coaching, and I do, is around call coaching. So I imagine a lot of people on the call have some kind of call intelligence software as well, like a Gong or Chorus or Exec Vision or whatever it is. In ambition coaching, you can create a template that, say it's questions asked or like discovery call coaching template. And you can watch the recording and use Ambition for the logging of comments. You can also do that natively in those tools. The value of doing it in Ambition is it goes in the coaching history, and now you see like one-on-one conversation, call coaching conversation, random one-off note of some coaching that happened. So when you think about logging historically to where you go back and know what you coached them on previously, it's just another easy win if you're a customer out there of how you can use coaching to help better align you and the rep to know what's being committed to in each conversation.
And let's see, Nathan asked about the check-in template or free-forming them based on each individual. Yeah, I'm leaning into that template. After doing one-on-ones a number of times, I've kind of figured out, the basic questions I'm typically asking. Now, certainly we branch off every once in a while, but that is a template that I'm using.
On that, stay high level. So thousands of people are using ambition coaching. We talk to customers all the day about what's working and not working. The general guidance is stay high level, be around 6 questions or less. You don't want it to be a novel of a coaching session. Like lead the sales rep, the SDR, whoever it is, in the right direction around the important things, but let them lead the conversation around what's most important. And at the end, like Chris has, open it up. Like, what else would you like to talk about? What else is important? What obstacles in the way that I can help remove? Because you want to give the individual contributor the freedom to obviously lead the conversation in an area that maybe you didn't already surface. Is there a session for check-in coaching for new reps? Chris, do you want to share how I can share how I'm using it for onboarding too, but do you want to mention maybe how your onboarding one-on-one is different than the one you just showed for Nolan?
Yeah, it's I use that one-on-one a little bit more from like a test out in certain areas that we've gone over in our different workshops, and want to make sure that they have like mastery over those particular topics. So So yeah, that's kind of how those questions, because I wouldn't be asking them about performance-based things yet. It would be a little bit more around mastery of certain topics. And I can follow up, with some specifics if you'd like me to.
Great question.
Any other question or coaching related questions? Before we move on? Okay. All right. And the last thing that I was going to mention is, again, just the importance of the recognition aspects. Mark went ahead and showed our Slack instance, so you got to see that. But I think there's so much flexibility and power in our triggers or workflows that allow you to send to Slack, to Teams, to email, these notifications that are super important for these sales roles that are really can often be a thankless job. We want to be recognizing those activity scores, the call numbers that we were showing. We put triggers for after they make it a 75 dials, 150 dials, and then 200 dials. There's the 100 activity score. There's every meeting that they set. Also down funnel. So if they happen to have an opportunity that they sourced, my SDR sourced, and then close wins or hits qualification and pipeline, we're going to recognize them for that as well. So I think that's just a really important aspect, especially as we have these reps who are sitting in their living room, right? They don't get that energy from the sales floor, to make sure that we're recognizing them in real time. And then that also just helps, Mark being in leadership, he doesn't know what Trey is up to or Miranda's up to on a day-to-day basis, but when he checks the Slack instance, he knows what they're up to. So that's super powerful as well. All right. Well, those are the big things I wanted to cover. Certainly keep throwing in questions. You've thrown some good ones in there now, but I'll pass it over to Mark and let him show.
All right, let's talk account executives. I've pulled up some additional examples in the background that Chris has given me some good ideas on that we didn't pre-plan around, but let's get into the real stuff. So you've heard a lot about sales development. As a reminder, I have enterprise AEs, mid-market AEs, and SMB. The use case and ambition for account executives does differ from how a sales development rep. You're going to see a lot of similarities, but my hope is to guide you on what the differences look like. In this, what I'm going to share is how a scorecard differs, how we build our actual scorecards for account executives here at Ambition. I'll also show you a new hire coaching program that we're running with a new mid-market seller. I'll get into accolades a little bit, which I know Chris uses a ton. I'll share some examples of how we use accolades in both development, but also in hitting quota or a competitive win, things of that nature. So we have got, I think, 20 minutes left here. I'll use 10 or so as we talk through this, but keep firing off questions. The most fun thing to do, frankly, is to give you clarity on the questions that you ask. So, all right, let's get into Ambition here. And I'm going to show you Colin Babinski. Okay, so Colin's been at Ambition for a few years. He's one of our enterprise account directors. So if you're not familiar with that role, he's got big old quota that he carries, really important, big strategic wins that he chases. And Q4 is about to be a really exciting time for him. But what I wanted to show you is this is his activity score today. Or actually, I think, hold on, I'm looking at last week, but looking at an activity score for a seller. The one thing you're going to notice that's different is we have AE sales meetings held. Why does this matter? Because I am much more interested in my sellers having external meetings than I am how many phone calls they're making, how many connects they have, how many emails they're sending. So you'll see here that I weight meetings that they are in very heavily. Now, how do I track that? We use Chorus. Gong does the same thing, but we have Chorus right into Salesforce. Anytime a Chorus meeting happens with an external email address, So not an internal meeting, but an external email address. It will log on that opportunity, that contact, that a meeting has happened. And in this case, Colin will get credit. So you'll see here that he's at 63. Oh, actually, we are looking at today. I'll show you a different day too. He's at 63 already today because he's had his 2 meetings. He's made 7 calls. 1 is connected. He's had 35 total targeted activities, which includes emails and LinkedIn touches and phone calls. Okay. Now, if you look back over here, what's important to remember is you don't have to get 100 the same way every time. So if we go look at September 14th, he had 5 meetings in that day. He only made 8 calls. He did send 44 total targeted activities. So he didn't connect with anybody that day, but he still hit 100 on his activity score because he was in meetings that matter. The same thing applies if you look at his following day, 6 total meetings, right? So when you're an account executive and you're in meetings all day, it's hard to hold you accountable to an outbound expectation in a meeting where you're trying to close deals, right? So know that it's not important that you hit every piece every day. It's just important that you get to 100, which is that guiding light of you've had a good day or a bad day. So the one thing I want to land there is scorecards are going to look different on AE. Think about giving them credit for being in meetings. There are ways to add qualifications in those meetings, of course, too. But one easy way to do it is if you're using call recording, have it sent into Salesforce. You can create an ambition metric that tracks what is sent into Salesforce from the call recording, and you're good to go. Okay. So Colin's been here a while. You see some accolades. While we're on him, I'm gonna show you accolades because I think this is really powerful. And ambition customers, if you're not using this, this is a no-brainer. It will take you 1 minute to create each of these, and they'll automatically log on profiles as they happen, or a manager can award them. So again, I'm giving you like serious behind the scenes look here at Colin. There's probably some stuff that people at Ambition are like, wait, did we show that? But here we go. So a couple use cases on his accolades. 1, Gong knowledge expert. We've done some training on Gong. We work with Gong a lot, even though we personally use Chorus here. We need to know what they do in order to be able to tell how Ambition and Gong work together. So Colin actually took an internal quiz that he passed. He got an accolade for it. Boom, Gong knowledge expert. He also has a deals club for deals that's closed on a monthly basis that's been awarded. He has some outbound pipeline club accolades. He's got when he hits quota. He has when he set a company record in some form or fashion. For him, I think it was the highest total contract value deal ever, right? So when you think about recognition, accolades are such an easy win. I'm sure there's someone out there that's like, oh, my team wouldn't really care about that. I challenge you, like, try it. And what this becomes is it's like a trophy wall for the seller. We had a customer the other day call it their wall of fame. I loved that. And when you're a sales manager, it's easy to forget what people did in the past. And you're so focused on what you're doing right now, you got to recognize the full story, right? So use accolades can be really helpful. Okay, I'm going to go over here to Sean Zender, who is one of our new hires. He's a mid-market account executive. And I'm going to show you his coaching that we have for onboarding. Okay, so this is Sean's actual coaching with me that we do every week. In fact, my next coaching session with him is in 16 minutes. Okay, so this is his onboarding one-on-one that we have. So here you see, like, how do you think you're doing? So I'm putting it back on him. Thinks he's doing pretty well, wants to improve in prospecting, made a lot of calls, not booked as many meetings as he wants. He wants some call coaching. Some highlights he has are some meetings that he held last week, some meetings that have progressed. He has an area that he wants to focus on, which is prospecting. I asked him to pick one of the meetings that's happened that we should discuss. And then I asked him how else I can help, right? So you'll see, as opposed to Nolan, who wrote a lot, Sean didn't actually write that much. I'm okay with that, but this is still the guidance for us to dig in around what needs to be discussed, like highlights from last week. So you'll see there's a bunch of these because we're doing this once a week. And here Ambition rolls that up. So it's really simple for me to say, man, I've done a million things in the last 7 days. What did we talk about last week? And I'm here into our coaching check-in. So you can create notes in here. You can create action plans. What most of you just saw there is just around the one-on-one check-in conversation. But for a sales manager, this saves you a ton of time, like Chris said earlier. So customers, if you're not using coaching, you should think about it. Obviously, we're happy to talk you through more of how we use it or how you might use it. The thing that comes up most often on the new sales side is you're probably doing it in like Google Docs. It's so easy to move that stuff into Ambition. So if you're doing that currently, let's get you on Ambition coaching. Okay, the last thing I wanted to showcase that we didn't hit on much is Ambition TVs. In this remote world, for those customers that used to be in office, you had Ambition TVs firing off all over the place. It was like a huge driver of culture. And Chris and I loved the TVs as much as anybody leading teams in the office. The SDR TV is still like a huge source of joy for me. But this is our go-to-market TV. So this includes marketing, sales, sales development, and we use it in a few different ways. So the first trick here is there's presentation mode, which means it stops the scrolling. For those of you that use it, you know it scrolls through each slide, or you have like a workflow that fires off and plays a video. Well, you can put it on presentation mode, and that's how I use it to present back to the company. So we have a call every Friday with all the go-to-market team where everyone essentially updates what's happened that week, priorities for the group. And so last week, the Minnesota Wild became a client. So I have their logo up here, and the account executive who sold this comes on and says, hey, the Wild are a new customer. They were a referral from the T-Wolves. We're really excited about the use case for them. We're going to help them with remote recognition, blah, 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 right? So we tell a win story. So logo, this is really easy. Even I can set it up. Then you have things like a SDR calls meetings leaderboard that someone like Chris could walk through. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. Or pipeline created, or we can automate birthdays. You can see nobody in Ambition has a birthday this week. Actually, our CEO's birthday was last week, so we just missed that. We can talk through close one revenue. We can talk through competitions. Here's one I'm running with my team for referrals that we just launched. So here you see Colin that we just talked about is tied for first with Andy for one referral each. So there are a lot of ways to use the TV. Most people think about it being on the actual TV in the office. What's important to remember is it's just a URL. You can pull it up anywhere. So if you have that URL, use it and use presentation mode for the sales leaders, because once you build these slides, which again will take you a minute, Ambition is automating the data collection. And so if you're updating on a competition, or if you're updating on pipeline or closed one, Ambition already has it there for you. There's no real time for you to build that out. So hopefully that helps round out a little bit of how we use it outside of just the SDR use case and how we use it for AEs. Switch up the scorecards. Use accolades, which we use a lot for sales development too, for easy ways to create recognition. Think about that TV as a presentation mode, not just firing off videos of accomplishments. And hopefully we've landed a couple ideas that you can implement pretty quickly here for your team. I know we've had a couple more comments come through. All right, if sales directors are outside of Ambition environment, can they see the TVs? We use it in the XDR structure only nowadays. Great question, Toledo. Okay, so a couple things there. And I'm not sure which client you're with, but if you have Slacker teams set up, you can push that visibility into groups that aren't currently signed up with Ambition. So for example, if you push it into a all sales development channel that only the XDR group is using, the non-XDRs can see what's happening. And they're probably getting jealous of the recognition that's coming through that channel. The TVs are just a URL. So you can share the URL. In most cases, there is a secure link on that. So we can only share the information internally at your company. But if you want to, there are ways to support that too. Just ask your CSM. We can make sure that you get access to that too. They are already jealous. You're right. That's good to hear. Okay. That's kind of the end of what I was going to share. Chris and I have gotten through a ton. Hopefully we've planted some ideas for you all that you can take and use, or for those of you that aren't customers yet and want to learn more, of course, like go to ambition.com, ask for a demo. I'm sure that button is like on every page you could possibly land on our website. We'd love to chat with you. But also we'd love to just continue to give you more practical ideas of what you can implement today, tomorrow to help lead your teams. What other questions are coming to mind that we can still answer for the crew? Or have we missed any?
We do have a couple of questions that I think that we may have jumped over.
Okay.
So Patrick said that he would love to know how you use the productivity tab for your team. I think, Chris, that was for you.
Yeah, this is a part of Ambition that I love and I think doesn't get talked about enough. But the productivity quadrant is going to plot on an x-axis, x and y-axis, the activity score versus the objective score, basically. So basically what you're looking at, we also call it a skill versus a will quadrant. So how I use that is it helps me understand whether it's a quantity or a quality issue with my rep, right? So are they not meeting the objectives we set for them because they're not doing enough activity, or they are doing enough activity, but they still aren't reaching those goals? So maybe there's a quality issue there that we need to dig in and coach around. So that's primarily how I'm using it. And again, it plots all of your reps on there. One thing that I have done before is your reps can't see that quadrant, but when I'm on a one-on-one with reps, I have shown that before, just so that they can have that full transparency to, this is where I stack up against my peers. Let's see how we can fix that.
Great. I think we have a couple other questions. So on the competitions, so can reps create their own competitions with other reps, or are they only set by managers?
Yeah, this is the one I jumped in on and encourage everyone to use the ask feature. So if you have a particular rep who wants to spin up a competition, we prefer that to go through the manager. The manager has a good sense of what metrics we want to incent around. And so just to make sure that, the manager kind of has the final sign off on that competition.
Yeah. One thing I'll add here is that it's really a permission set thing. Like you could set your permissions to where individual reps can challenge each other. What we see most often with customers, for some real talk, is that is cool. And then all of a sudden the leadership notices that these battles are happening on metrics that aren't that important to the business. And then they take it back and they're like, hey, if we're going to have competition, we want to make sure we're competing around the right metrics. So it sounds great. Your reps get fired up. The truth is, pretty quickly, management goes, wait, why are they competing on that? Like, I don't even care about that. And then you rein it in a little bit.
Yeah, the classic example I always use is, my reps will want to create a competition around calls. Who can make the most calls? And it's like, well, I definitely want calls, but I want them to be quality calls. So that's why we always pair that with connects, talk time, some of those different quality metrics that we want to marry that call number with.
I know you guys talked a bit about accolades, but there was a question for weekly call blitz competitions. Are you using accolades for prizes or additional prizes such as expensed lunch?
Yeah, accolades. So if you win 2 call blitzes in a week, you get an accolade. But then, typically on a week-to-week basis, the winner of every call blitz is it's more around a pride thing.
Great. I think that covers pretty much everything, unless anyone else wants to drop another question. We do have a few more minutes if you want to drop another question in the chat, but I think that's pretty much everything. So just as a reminder, you will get a recording after this. We will send that out. And thank you guys so much for joining and for taking us through this. This has been great.
It's been fun. Find us on LinkedIn. We're happy to connect with you and share more ideas. Our success is your success, right? We want you guys to have a lot of fun and drive some crazy results with your teams. So as you saw, we eat our own dog food, drink our own champagne, whatever it is, analogy, and let us know how we can help you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.